Everyone has heard the expression about forgetting the past and the doom of repeating it, perhaps to the point of taking such wisdom for granted. Like anything wonderful, acclamation to something that is common knowledge gets tossed around with lip service but little to no application, especially on a personal and individual level. While most people will toss this pearl of wisdom around about knowing the past to prevent a repeat in the future, the general usage of it's applied to history at large in the minds of most. Granted, it does certainly apply to world, national, or community history in its evocation, and when considered, can certainly avert world wars, Holocaust, forced slavery, and every other epic fuck up by humanity at large. But where the concept of knowing the past to prevent its returning in the present truly has power is in the experience of the sovereign, spirit filled individual rather than in the grotesquerie of a group. It can be the most liberating gnosis in our life as one when fully comprehended and put into action in our personal tale with ferocity. Neglecting to remember or put together the elements that made us up in our formative years as children, which, as we all can agree, were traumatic, toxic, and dysfunctional, ripe for future diagnoses that make Big Pharma water at the mouth, hardwires us for the affliction of repetition compulsion. The Freudian concept of doing the same thing over and over and over again on an unconscious level in an attempt to close a loop from the horrible, terrible, no good things that happened to us as kids. A baby in a crib endures the pain of insecurity when it cannot see the parent, which to it is God. The baby creates chaos by tossing its toy and wailing for something to be done. The parent appears to redeem the rattle, which comforts the baby with feelings of safety and security until the absence of its God or gods occurs again. If the baby has learned anything at this stage, it's that creating chaos equals the return of security, even though the process of this security is stressful, scary, and soaked in tears. This repetition compulsion continues to be solidified in the child's organic computer via emotion over logic until around the ages of 8 to 10 when cognition begins to boot up. However, by this time, in many, if not most cases, the child has been burdened with trauma through emotional, physical, sexual, or spiritual abuse by parents and family surrounding them that didn't have their shit together before bringing a life into the world either. This is where the spiritual concept of generational curses confirms the science of epigenetics and psychology. We repeat the chaos in our childhoods into adulthood, primarily because our parents did not do their due diligence to stop the buck before it passed to us. If we came up in broken homes without two loving and respectful to one another parents, the toxicity of bickering back and forth between a man and a woman sadly becomes normal. And while this dynamic is anything but normal, we acclimate to it as if it were, and the trauma of this parental dysfunction hides itself in our history without us realizing that our past most certainly wasn't. When we see one or more of our parents which set the example of what security is supposed to be drinking, drugging, or acting out in despicable ways for spite, we begin to define what security feels like with the chaos that was put before us. Is it no wonder, then, that well into our adult lives we find ourselves drawing in relationships, scenarios, and situations that are eerily reminiscent of the horseshit our parents either didn't know how to fix or didn't care to? And the snowball of the family curse keeps on rolling down through our progeny. As the good book says, every creature brings forth after its own kind, in its own image and likeness. Dad was a drunk or abandoned a daughter before she could walk. Then daughter pulls in a string of men throughout her lifetime that do the same, which oftentimes instills a bitterness and perception that all men are trash and merely exist for goods and services. Mom was a sexual deviant that got her rocks off by violation and normalization of child molestation, and son grows up to do the same with hours and hours of upskirt footage on his phone from beaches and bathrooms where his dopamine was achieved through voyeuristic rape, trying to convince himself this sort of thing is normal when its actual sickness is evident to all who discover him. These sorts of ailments within society and the collective unconscious perpetuate themselves in the mechanism of repetition compulsion that has not been observed, halted, and reverse engineered by the individual that suffers these traumas within themselves. To remember is to put something broken back together again. Where we all were broken in some way or another is the past of our upbringing. We sail down the river of denial when calling our traumas normal and have the audacity to be shocked when those same circumstances keep hitting us in the face harder and harder as we go. Unfortunately, many throw their hands up at some point and accept that this type of hardship and debilitatingly toxic sort of existence is just life and pass our buck of responsibility on to others. Sadly, this is often to children that deserve much more than our personal apathy and refusal to stop what happened to us, within us. Rather than stand up to our past and tear down the false senses of security our parents pawned onto us through their ignorance, shame, and facilitation of chaos as normality, we utilize our offspring as extensions of our own stubbornness and addiction to toxicity through abuse, neglect, or parental alienation against another. Rather than owning up to our own bullshit, we guarantee the sorrow we harbor will live on in the face of our kids, only much more wickedly refined than when we received it ourselves. Woe unto those that partake of that cup, for as the Christ once said, it is better for them if they had never been born than to have touched an innocent child with toxic hands of harm. Of course, hope is not lost for those that harbor meekness and humility within their hearts. The few that have the courage to remember their past of horror and with determined will put it back together again can and do put a stop to the generational curses carried in lifetimes of DNA. When the love for a child overshadows the love of the self, a person does bring forth the strength to stand up against the past and tell it to go fuck itself with absolute clarity on what will no longer be called normal. This courage to explore the tree of death over faking an ascension on the tree of life is the only escape clause in healing that which is broken within us for the sake of what has come forth from us. When an individual has endured more than their fair share of suffering and comes to the place of understanding why, the loop can be closed. The cycle of trauma can shoot off into another direction of life within them, around them, and especially for those who now look to them for security. When we apply the expression of being doomed to repeat a history we do not remember to our personal present and take the action required to ensure we never forget, it is not just ourselves we save, but the lives of our children we were entrusted with to do just that. Thank you for your kind attention, and me and my first officer, Rex the Interdimensional Space Dog, would like to remind you that for more of this content, you can go to zeninthecar.com and hit subscribe, and hit all of our other doohickeys with bells and give us our dopamine. And we do want to let you know, if you support our work at zeninthecar.com, we just opened up the Zen in the Car store, so you can get some useless trinket or t-shirt or phone case or laptop case with our sleek, sexy logo seen all over America. Until next time, stay well. Right, Space Dog? Zen in the Car, for the spiritually minded liberty activist on the go. Liketh, shareth, subscribeth. It's what the cool kids do.